Here's another stimulating Twitchcast over the Texas legislature. Now, this Twitchcast is going to cover basic information that can also help you with your vocabulary. So let's get started. The Texas legislature is what we call bicameral. Now, that simply means that we have a two-house legislature, bi meaning two, cameral meaning a house. We have the Texas House of Representatives and the Texas Senate. Now, we have a very unique situation in Texas in that we have a biennial legislature. Now, what that means is that our state legislature meets every 2 years. Now, what's going to happen is that they meet for every 2 years. Now, I want you to write this down for 140 days. We're going to come back to that again. Now, when we talk about the biennial every 2 years, what that means is that our members, whether they're members of the Texas House or whether they're a member of the Texas Senate, they are not full-time. They are part-time. And that is important because these men and women are not, they have to make a living. So they go back to wherever they're from and they become accountants or lawyers, or there's a dentist, there's a doctor, they own their own businesses. So they cannot devote everything they have to making laws. And that is one of the things that the founders of the Texas Constitution wanted. They did not want these people to become rich off of government. They did not want them to become so entrenched in being a politician that they would forget what it's like to be a citizen. Talking about this legislature, there are some things I want you to know about just the general influence. What really influences these men and women? Well, the first thing is the Texas legislature has very limited powers. And this is part of that whole check and balance system. And because they are part-timers, look at the second bullet, they have very limited knowledge about all these topics because they are accountants and there's a preacher, and so they have limited knowledge and limited time to devote to making laws and that sort of thing for the state of Texas. These men and women, number 3, are heavily influenced by business. Remember, we talked about capitalism. We talked about our culture here in Texas. And so they are heavily influenced by the big business, the corporations. And so laws and policies and all those kind of things are remember this is constant, very pro-business in this state. And then they have extreme limits on how much money they can spend. And I've already hinted at that once when we did the outline of the Texas Constitution. They have to keep the budget balanced. And I will be covering that some more. You should remember what the word demographics means. What does the Texas legislature physically look like? Well, it's mostly men. Now, that is changing. And it's changing. It's over the last 6 years, we've had more and more women be elected to the Texas legislature. They are still a majority white. However, that as well is changing as the state begins to change. They are mostly middle age. There's maybe several mid-30s, but they're on up there in their 40s and 50s, and some of them in their 60s. They are heavily Protestant. That means they're not Catholic, they're not Jewish, and in Texas, they're not Muslims. And so they are like Baptist, Methodist, a general Christian church. And that's important in Texas when we talk about what does Texas look like. College educated, many of them are college educated because they are business people, they're lawyers, etc. 1/3 of them are lawyers. Okay, so that's important as well. And then they are very, very heavy business. Like I said, small business owners. lots of accountants, real estate people, and of course, lawyers are considered to be small business. So that's what the average member of the Texas House of Representatives looks like. Let's look at what are the jobs. What is it that a Texas member of the Texas legislature is expected to do? Well, number one, they are expected to pass laws. That's one of their jobs. Number two, I want you to look at the bottom. Number two is to create a budget for the 2 years. Remember, they meet every 2 years, biennial. They must create a budget. They have to. Number three is not on the slide. Number three is represent their voters. Got it? And then number four is to create the parts of the government, like boards and commissions, that run the government, the everyday operations of the government. And I gave you 2 examples here, the Department of Public Safety, Board of Education. So let me do it one more time. Pass laws. Create a budget. Represent their voters. And then create the groups that will run the state government day to day. Thank you very much, and that's it for this Twitchcast.